we write our own story, and there's nothing wrong with writing a grand story.
Hi, I'm Michellebosch, real estate investor, mom, wife, and host of the InFLOW podcast. And I'm passionate about helping women invest in land and apartments. Join me each and every week for real estate investing strategies and interviews with thought leaders that will leave you inspired and ready to step into flow for inflows of cash, inflows of ease, and inflows of grace in your life. Now, here on YouTube are the video versions of my podcast, and in order for you to get my latest information, please go ahead and subscribe. And now, let's go. Welcome to the InFLOW podcast. I'm your host, Michellebosch. Excited to be with you guys today. Today, I am here for part 2 of a conversation that I had with the amazing Christina Walls. She is a total rock star when it comes to land investing and land flipping. She is a client in our coaching program as well, and hopefully soon to be a coach, I hope. And we started a conversation, a few weeks back. And so if you've listened to her first episode, this is kind of a continuation of that conversation. And we decided to jump on and do a second episode because towards the tail end of that, we started talking about some really, juicy stuff that I think would help a lot of other women, really understand or flip the switch when it comes to mindset and poverty consciousness, because at each level of our journey, we all have levels of that, poverty consciousness. I mean, that is something that even, to this day, Jack and I continue to work on because it's always a spiral movement upward. It's a constant re-engineering of the next level and the next level of success and really pushing the boundaries of what's possible. So with that said, welcome to InFLOW, Christina, for part 2.
Thanks for having me.
So yeah, Christina, so I wanted to basically just pick right back up, in our conversation that we had last time. A lot of our listeners probably already know you've been doing land flips, you've been doing quite a bit, you are pretty advanced already. You started, with our strategies originally with the land profit generator method, and then, you grew your business to a point where you really needed to look into coaching to really engineer that next level of growth for you and start bringing team in and really operating your business in the most efficient and effective way, really focusing and honing in on the 20% that's going to give you the 80%, of the results with KPIs, with metrics, and so on and so forth. But I want us to go ahead and back up a little bit, and because that is all nice and sexy, but in order to get there, you needed to, at the very beginning, when probably land flipping was not even in your radar, overcome certain challenges. So why don't you tell us about, the biggest challenge that you had to overcome at the beginning of your journey when you found yourself as a single mom raising your son, and real estate was still not even, or land flipping was not in your radar? What was that first shift? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, absolutely. So I guess the first thing I want to say is that my story is really not unique to other women, and my experience is not unique. And I'm not a superwoman, but I definitely had a desire to change. And I think a lot of women have that desire to change, but they don't know how to. So that's why I think it's important for women to discuss the things that they've been through, whether they feel ashamed of them or not. So I guess it would start a long time ago, but for years I felt like I didn't have a lot of value. And because I felt like I didn't have a lot of value, all of my choices was kind of self-prophesying that I didn't have a lot of value. I was making choices to reflect that internal feeling that I don't have value. I was in a marriage that was abusive, and that just really reflected exactly what I felt about myself. And so therefore I was like digging a ditch, and I was in the ditch, so I was struggling with this. And I grew up in a home where my dad was an alcoholic, and we had problems in the home. So these situations, in a very unproductive way, I was familiar with. So I just continued them on. Yet inside, I definitely did not want to live like this. There you have that internal struggle. You want to do better, but when you're younger, you don't really. You sometimes you don't even know that the choices you're making are self-destructive, because that's all you know. There's no other influence. So I remember,
it's programming that we grow up with, and that we basically take as natural, and as as the only thing. Like, you don't know what you don't know.
That's right. That's right. But I definitely had a desire all my life that I was going to do something. I want to do something.
And that's, in my mind, I always think of those are like whispers from God. Those deep desires, those yearnings, is like a whisper from God, that that you just need to tune into sometimes. But never mind.
That's the truth, though.
Let's go back to you.
That's the truth, though. That's right. So kind of the whole journey and where I am now is literally to speak to that woman that is at the bottom. I know what it's like to be, I know what it's like to have an addiction. I know what it's like. I was a I had alcohol and drug problems when I was younger. I know what it's like to be in an abusive relation, to feel like you're nothing, to be broke and single, all of that. So the turning point was in my marriage, when I was just feeling like absolute nothing. And I remember I was in a situation where there was like a lot of negative things being said to me. And for the first time in my life, I recognized that everything that was being said was a lie. And I was like, I think this is your problem and not mine. Like, inside, I realized that. And I started acknowledging these lies that, first and foremost, I believed, and that was within me. And I was creating scenarios to support those lies. Now, once those lies, I started recognizing that, you know what, I do have value. I am not below nobody. I'm not this or that. And once I started recognizing it, really, everything started falling into place. I changed the situation. Like, I had moved out of, in my marriage, I'd moved out twice. The first time I moved out, I was broke. Like, I was paying all of my bills. I wasn't having a problem paying my bills, but there was like no extra. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. So the second time I moved out, I said, you know what? I'm not going to be that broke single mom. I'm going to buy new furniture. I'm going to have a car that I want. I'm going to go after my dreams. And, but the first thing I had to do was recognize the lies. Okay. I also had to acknowledge my part in the whole situation, meaning I had to take responsibility for the choices that I made and the lies that I had believed. And to be honest, I had to just let it all go. I had to let go of the blame. I had to let go of the pain. I had to, make changes within myself. But once I did that, I started to become free. I mean, like, free, because I wasn't blaming anybody. I divorced the lies. I was no longer married to these lies that I had within myself from a childhood. So
can I ask a question? When you said that, you recognize that, the statements that were being thrown about you, from your spouse back then were lies. Something had to happen before for you to recognize that was a switch. What was it that happened there? How were you able to all of a sudden distinguish this? You're really not talking about me.
Right. It's a little hard to answer because it was a process.
Okay.
You know,
Yep.
it definitely was a process. When I had moved back and was trying to reconcile, I made a list of deal breakers. You know, I'm not going to deal with certain things.
Basically,
And
you created you're like, okay, I will stop doing this, and I'm going to stop accepting this kind of crap,
that's right.
you know, from people. It's
Yep.
a kind of like a stop doing. I usually have a stop doing for all kinds of activities that are not in my genius, but there's also a stop doing of, these are the people that I will no longer associate. This is the type of income that I completely reject. Like, for example, for us, it was like, I reject any income that comes from a corporate job.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And you kind of like, you know, lay the, you know, the line in the sand of like, okay, so you created a list of non-negotiables of things that basically
it just wasn't going to work. Well, yeah. And also what I also realized is that it's not working for me anymore. Because I wasn't sitting in self-pity anymore. I was not wanting somebody to emotionally beat me up, because I was rising up. I was getting out of the hole. I was not trying to stay in that hole. And so I had to rise up. I had to acknowledge my worth. And that is a process, because you go from the not knowing, because that's all you've ever seen. And then you start going around different scenarios, or you start, you know, searching yourself, you know, and start saying, why is this happening in my life? And you really do have to take personal responsibility for choices that you make. And you really do have to stop feeling sorry for yourself, and you have to start letting go. And you also have to have a little bit of understanding that there's a lot of broken people in this world. You know, and you have to say, I understand that this person is broken too, but it's not up to me to change anybody but myself. And to try to change somebody other than yourself, if you're not God, you can't do it. You can barely change your own self.
I know.
You know, that's
especially
a challenge.
Because, you know, in yoga, we call that, you know, our brains go into what they call samskaras, which are deep grooves that are created by certain patterns of thoughts. Certain patterns of thoughts. And that groove, the more that you think those thoughts, the deeper it gets, and that is becoming your programming. And in order to deprogram yourself from that, it's difficult. Like you said, it's hard changing yourself. Let's not even think about changing someone else.
No.
And so basically you start this process of basically going from being what I call a thermometer that, you know, that acquires the temperature of your environment, to really becoming a thermostat where you're like, okay, no, wait a minute here. I'm in charge of the temperature here. You know what I mean? And I can either pump up the heat or, you know, bring in the cool, nice, fresh air. And so for you, you know, you start moving from being a thermometer to being the thermostat of your circumstances, you know, around money and self-worth issues, you know. And you go on your way, and then what happens?
So then I start having a little more confidence in myself. You know, I'm out of a negative environment. I have a determination to, why not try? Why not go after the things I've always wanted to go after? Why not? So, but I had a little bit of,
that's beautiful. That's beautiful, Christina, though, because that's, you know what I mean? It's beautiful because the question that you're asking is a very good quality questions. Normally, good quality questions give rise to good quality answers. So maybe part of unraveling and of getting out of where we're at is asking better questions to ourselves, so that our subconscious starts eliciting better answers, perhaps. So and I like what you said, you know, why not me, why not this, why not that, you know, because that also gives you an opening into other abilities, you know what I mean? So I love that quality of that question for sure. Is that something that you use often, you know?
Well, now I do all the time. Why not? I'm like, if they can do it, why can't I? There's no superhuman, but it takes skill and it takes effort and it takes change. And that's where the, so to speak, rubber meets the road. Because if you're not willing to make those changes, then you're just going to stay right where you're at. And changes are uncomfortable. So that's whenever I started. I had always wanted to go into investing, but my big thing was like, oh my gosh, I don't have the money, I don't have the knowledge. So I said, well, let me just join this association, Realtors Association, and get some knowledge. And that's where it started. I started meeting people, and they were doing incredible things. And I mean, there was this older woman that went to the women's group, and she was like buying non-performing notes. I'm like, what is that? You're doing what? You're just flipping paper, And she and I kind of made a little connection, and I still see her, when I go to the meetings and stuff, but it started opening up my ideas and what my point of view was, because I only had this point of view just because that was my experience. So then that's when I started investing. And I made a video on YouTube once recently about how investing will change your world. And it's not so much the investing that changes your world, it's who you meet, the courage that it takes. And once you do some deals and you're like, oh my gosh, I just made $10,000, and I just, really didn't do a tremendous amount. It's not like, scrubbing tubs or something, And so you do one thing and it really does compound. Because you're like, and then you start meeting people and they're doing like $100,000 deals. And you're like, look, if they're doing it, so can I, So it creates, you perpetuate, it's perpetuating. You just keep moving. And then it really just changes.
Because once you have momentum, it's yes. That first, it's that getting yes. going and creating that first yes. momentum to get you in motion. I think that it's the hardest of, for everyone, because it does require, going through that cycle that we call, it's not a concept that we made up. It's actually from a gentleman by the name of Dan Solomon of the 4 C's, that you commit to something and you muster the courage, and by mustering the courage, you find yourself actually doing it and going through the motions, and that going through the motions gives you capability, and that's what gives you the confidence to go and say, oh my gosh, I can do the next deal. And if this deal was $3,000, it is a big deal. Even though it's a small deal, it's a big deal, because it really has sculpted and magnified and amplified my confidence level so that I can go for the bigger, like you said, $100,000 and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, if you think about it, and I'm sure it's your experience, because of you're expressing it in a different way, but saying the exact same thing, is like, whenever we set up, goals with Jack, and they're usually monetary, because that's kind of like a way to keep score. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, it's a way to keep score and to measure it. But at the end of the day, that measurement falls short to really the measurement of who you become as a leader and as a person. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
The attainment of that goal. And so a lot of us think that we're going for that dollar amount, but what we're in fact going for is who we become.
Absolutely.
To achieve that dollar amount.
I'm reading High Performance Habits, and he talks about self-development. And I can honestly say that growing a business is more about self-development than money. Because I say marriage, having a kid, and owning a business will teach you everything you need to know about yourself, the good and the bad. After that, it's your choice what to do with it. Are you going to change? Are you going to take those risks? Are you going to go into the areas that are uncomfortable in order to grow? Because you have to. There's no way you can change and just stay the same. It's impossible.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's nothing more that will sculpt your spirit like being in a marriage, the parenting category of your life, your love life, and your career and finances, which are usually tied to, if you're an entrepreneur, to the business that you're working on. And it's incredible because you start with very little capacity, I would say, for change, and your capacity all of a sudden goes from this tiny little dot, and it starts growing and growing and growing. But at the beginning, if you were to give the problems that sometimes and the challenges that we face to a beginning investor, or a beginning entrepreneur of any kind, any business whatsoever. Yeah. Most people would crawl next to their toilet in a fetal position. You know what I mean?
Yes,
with
absolutely.
the challenges that we face.
Absolutely.
And the only way to kind of like increase that capacity is by going through that process of like, oh my God, this is the next challenge. I believe that because I have been able to resolve issues in the past, I can figure this one out. Yep. And I don't know all the answers. There's a ton of unknowns, but I'm going to still muster the courage and walk into the fire. Yep. And gain the capability and get that confidence and so on, and go through that spiral. Like you said, it's something that perpetuates. Yep. And for the good, always in my mind, for sure. Yeah,
definitely. And one of the things that I realized also is, while I was evolving, while I was changing, I recognized that I had false perceptions, not only about myself, but about other women. My son he was in sports, and he went to a really nice school, and I would go show up at the sporting events, and oftentimes I would be like the only woman without, his dad. And I can remember feeling like these stay-home women, they got it so easy, this and that. But one day I was at a dinner, and they were all talking about how they had gone to college and they had careers, and before they got married, they were doing all these things. And it dawned on me that they gave up certain dreams. Yeah. And I had never thought about that. I was over here thinking, oh, they got it so good and I got it so rough. And then it dawned on me, you know what? We're all in the same boat. I'm over here sad because I'm working, and they're over there sad because they're not. And so there was a perception too.
Yeah, and there's a lot of women that that actually, which I'm gonna get into a hot topic here probably, but anyways, I'm gonna speak my mind. There's a lot of of women that have this amazing education. They choose to get home, and that's exactly what they want. That's amazing.
Right.
And then there's this other segment of women that I think are caught in a sandwich. And what I mean by this, and it's a real shit sandwich actually, because they're caught in a sandwich where, they have this amazing education, and somehow I think they choose, but I don't think it's a real true choice. They choose to, I think it's a choice that is made based on programming, on seeing in the prior generation that mom stayed at home, and that and even though you see new people now and new generations of women out there that do not have this issue and do not have any remorse and do not have any guilt about going out there and being working moms, you know what I mean? But somehow they're caught in this shit sandwich, in this in-between generation, and they choose to stay at home, but I don't think that in their heart of hearts that's really what they wanted. And that staying at home, whether you choose it actively in your heart of hearts or you don't choose it in your heart of hearts, is a mistake. Is a mistake, because if that spouse, if that husband loses a job, you have a big problem.
You have a big problem.
If that spouse chooses another spouse, you have a big problem.
You have a big problem.
You know what I mean? If that spouse gets really sick and you need to go out there, which is, one of the ladies that came here on the show, Kathy Fettke, she talked about, her husband being diagnosed with cancer, and all of a sudden she was thrown into the breadwinner position, and it was incredibly hard for her. She was able to make it through because necessity creates and fosters innovation and courage, like nothing will.
Right.
But in any way, shape, or form that you see that, that choice of completely abdicating all power from finances and not having any say in finances or contributing in any way, shape, or form in your financial, future and present, I think it's a mistake, but that's a different conversation. But that just triggered me. Okay, we're talking truth here. Let's just like spit it out.
Well, I have back here says, go make your money, honey. I realize that the reality is that I'm not going to wait for anybody. I'm not going to sit around and be like, oh, well, one day I'll have, this great life, this great spouse, this great, rich man or whatever. Look, I am my own person. I have my own dreams. I want to make my own money. I want to do things that I can do. I want to see what I can do.
Yes.
I don't need somebody telling me, no, you have to do this and you have to do that. Now, of course, when you're married, you need to discuss things or you're rude,
Yeah.
But
it's part of being in a marriage and a relationship.
Part of it, right? You just don't go rogue. You need to discuss things, and I'm not instigating that at all. But you should have your own dreams. You should be able to fulfill what's in your heart. A lot of women carry around a lot of shame for what they've been through, who they are, what their dreams are. Don't dream too big. You're a woman. Don't do this. You're a woman, and, I have a sister that's, my son calls her the feminist. She's definitely extreme, like on what she thinks women should be. But sometimes I listen to her and I'm like, yeah, she's a little out there. But saying that, sometimes I'm like, yeah, she's kind of right. Like, in that we should be able to do what we want to do. There is no dream that we should not be able to attain. And I understand oftentimes family, spouses, there might be some challenges in that, and I don't want to act like that there's not, because there can be, and you do have to work it out.
Yeah, and I think some of those challenges also have to do with, Christina, with what we're talking about, which is, programming
Yes.
of even like the roles and how we have been brought up and raised, you know what I mean? That are unconscious, that are working unconsciously on us.
Yes.
And right now, as I parent a daughter, a 12-year-old daughter, Jack and I are so conscious of us not fitting the mold, the model of the traditional, stay-at-home mom, the traditional dad goes out there. We actually have roles reversed. Like, mom is the one that, sets the rules and sets, the direction of the bus and where we're going. And dad helps with laundry, and dad helps, and dad does all the cooking. So she's being, she's being raised because we're creating on our own model, but I want her to be aware also. And if you're listening, all of the unconscious programming that is happening out there, when it comes to, little girls knowing that they can go for certain things.
Yep. That's right.
And they shouldn't second guess themselves just because they're a girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
And I do that with my son also. I want him to know that a woman can get it. You know what I mean? That he
needs to find someone that gets it and that is willing to that gladiator woman next to him, side by side, fighting together for a better future, for a bigger and better future. Not someone that wants to like just sit down and check out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or at least, I don't want Sophia to, find someone that just wants to check out. I want them to both be really sovereign in their power and step into those, into that relationship, not just, as in a traditional role model in the future for her. But my wish for her, if anything, my biggest legacy would be for her to really pay attention to, to that partner, to that decision of who will become her partner, because it's a very important one. And to make sure that if that person has grown up in that traditional, setting, that they're open to what she grew up with, that she doesn't give up on what she's, what she's seen for herself being modeled day in and day out, you know what I mean? And so on and so forth. And it's, and I think it all comes I think what we're talking about here, and what you're talking about a lot, Christina, and the story of your life is sovereignty. Is that you found your sovereignty. You found that you are a sovereign creator and co-creator with God. You know what I mean? And you act on it. At the end of the day, you believe it. You don't just talk about it, but you act on it.
And it's a progress. Definitely. This last month, I had like kind of I don't know, emotional, I don't even know what the word is, emotional challenges, like those old mental paths that I had taken for years. They were coming in, and they came in kind of,
they're
sneakily.
Like triggers.
Yes.
You always have them come back and revisit us, and when we're about to up level, all of a sudden there's a trigger.
Yeah, and also sometimes it's who you're around. I had gone on a family vacation, and I was around the people that I grew up with. Not, I don't have any problems with my family, but it's that same mind frame. So I came back from this vacation, and all of a sudden I was like feeling like the same old, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. And then one day I was like, what? And it caught me off guard. And I was like, oh no, this can't happen. And actually, I talked to my coach. He and I were actually discussing it, and I'm glad I actually brought it up, because I felt like it was just a hindrance in my progress. And recognizing it, and you really have to turn the channel. And some of these things take practice. It's not like you can have a lifetime of this terrible, negative, degrading thinking, and then all of a sudden you're like on cloud 9 every day. It's not going to happen. And there are triggers.
It's a constant cultivation. It's like an ongoing process. That's something like that you have to do every day. Like you brush your teeth and you take showers. You know what I mean? It's like you need them every day. This is something that you need every day, to work on, to make sure that you're always, in the really emitting in the highest frequency, that you're always in the highest frequency. Absolutely. Totally get it. That's a very good point. So we go from a stop doing list to great quality questions like the why nots, to really mustering the courage to go and change, that it takes effort, not just in a one episode event, but that it's an ongoing cultivation. And shame. I know that you talked about shame, and I don't know if you've read or have been exposed to any of the work from Brené Brown, where she talks about shame and how shame is really at the culprit of us not being able sometimes to be brave. There's a huge connection between shame and bravery.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that afflicts a lot of us women. To this day, even for me, I know Barb, my assistant here on the podcast, she knows that I've gone from even showing up, not just in my voice, but showing up physically and present, with my presence in video, that has been an ongoing cultivation and process. You know what I mean? Because at the beginning, I'm like, oh my gosh, first of all, I have an accent. I don't know. I feel a little bit of shame of, will people have, listen to what I have to say, with my accent? And there's basically roots of shame there. I'm like, okay, no, if I'm already doing this, let's do it. Let's have a video as well, and so on and so forth. And so we all struggle with, levels of this, and it's just not in physical appearance, but in many cases, it affects our finances and our money. Now, tell me a little bit about, what do you think about, because I always think as money as something that it's an energy that is neutral, and that we give it the charge, whether it's going to be positive or negative, and that really money, because I know you say back there, go make your money, honey, amplifies who you are. Like if you're a jerk, money's going to make you a bigger jerk.
Absolutely.
But if you're a good person, a good, generous person, it's going to also amplify that. So can you speak a little bit to your experience and how you feel money has has amplified, when you've gone and make your money, honey, how that has shaped or amplified who you really were from the get-go, and it's made it brighter and brighter and brighter to the point that now you want to go talk, and start speaking about your experience, and and so on and so forth. Tell me a little bit about that.
So yeah, what it has amplified is my desire to, because I'm getting results. It has amplified my desire to reach out to people who have maybe been where I have been, and to say, you can do it. You can change. You can rise above. You don't have to stay in a particular mind frame. And I have people reach out to me that sometimes I'm kind of surprised. And they'll ask me about, investing, or they'll ask me about things. And it is my desire to see them grow. It is my desire that they overcome, and that they can, attain the things that they want in life, whether it be investing or whatever, the route is. So what it has amplified is, I guess, because I have seen how it has opened doors for me and changed me. It's amplified my desire to reach back and reach out to other women and say, you know what, I know what it feels like to feel like nothing, but I also know what it feels like to make changes and start making my own money. Without a limit, meaning, I'm not going to say, oh, this is the limit. That's all I can make, because sometimes we have financial limits. We say, oh, I can only make 100,000. That's it. I'm comfortable with that. I had a lady say to me the other day, she was like, I just want to make enough money to pay my bills. I'm like, that's it. I said,
it's being a thermometer versus being a thermostat, and increasing the temperature of what I'm okay, comfortable having in the bank account, and Jack always tells a story about, how he used to be a zero kind of man, where even though he was having a great paycheck, at the end of the month, the account always came to zero. Right. And then he's like, no, let me start reprogramming that. Yes. I'm now a $1,000 kind of man.
Yes.
And all of a sudden the account, we managed to keep it at 1,000. Right. And then 3, and then 5, and then 10, and so on and so forth. So it's that, bringing up temperature.
And that's a progress too. Yeah.
So there is, it's almost like, I always say that these two topics of spirituality and money are not mutually exclusive topics, because you just said it right now. You said, you know what? I see that I'm seeing results, that I am having results, monetary results, and I'm also having spiritual results, and how my character and how me as a person is developing, you know what I mean? And that's the thing, that's a side effect. I think we talk about mastery from a point of view of scale in doing deals, you know what I mean? And we always say, if you don't have repetition, of hundreds of deals, you don't have scale. Yeah.
Right.
Repetition, scale only comes from repetition, and what repetition creates is mastery. Mastery, not just to deal with how to structure or creatively come up, and buy a property and sell a property, but mastery, I think there is an aspect of mastery that seldom is discussed and seldom is talked about, Christina, which is the fact that once you become a master at something, that you understand and you know how to do something really, really well, you know what I mean? That the biggest desire that comes afterwards is to serve, is to be of service to others, you know what I mean? That is like and it is almost like the greatest service that you can do is to, oh my gosh, I'm at this point now, let me start helping others jump over the fence so that they can come on this side as well, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that, that's another whisper, I feel like, of God, in your heart, when you're like, okay, it's not just because I've gone through the, cycle of having the courage, the capability, and I'm having the results and I'm having the confidence, but I think you have to be a very special type of person as well, because you're really allowing that process to really mold you, and allowing for you to really tune in to those whispers and say, oh my gosh, yeah, now what my heart is yearning is to be of service to others. You know what I mean?
Well, that perpetuation opens up more doors. It's like where I was even 2 years ago, doors are opening. Things that I'm wanting are different. And to be honest, on many levels, it is changing to the serving, to being able to serve, being able to help, to being able to let people know that you can change.
Yeah. Heck, the moment you bring somebody to start working with you in your land business, and that you know that person's family and well-being, financial well-being, depends on your ability to be brave every single day, you're being of service. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's just that it's not, people don't see it that way. You know what I mean? But it is, again, part of that, service spirit and what comes with mastery at some point. So,
and responsibility. These are responsibilities, and I don't take them lightly, and it's important to realize that when you are a business owner and you are growing, you definitely have to shoulder responsibility. Yeah. You have to shoulder, and you have to take authority over it.
Yeah. Now, so I realize that I've been taking quite a bit of your time, but if we were to, sum up this conversation, like, what would be a piece of advice, and what do you see in the future? What are you excited most about, for the future?
Oh, wow. Well, I have a lot of things that I'm working on in the future.
Yeah, and we work in the future first in thought forms.
Yes,
and
that's
in plans,
right.
In the present, because at the end of the day, our present is past decisions we have taken.
Yes. Yeah.
And the future are present decisions that we're taking right now. You know what I mean? That's how we create the future. Absolutely.
So I guess for the future, I do want to continue to speak to women and let them know that they can do it, that we write our own story, and there's nothing wrong with writing a grand story, and so everything that I have based on in the future is rooted in that. Me writing my own story, wanting to speak, writing a book, coaching, whatever opens up. And again, things open up. The more you travel down a road, the more doors open. But if you just stop, then you're just going to stay right where you are. And I don't want to stop. I find that I get a little bored when I stop, and I start getting complacent when I stop. And it's just so unappealing.
You're addicted to growth, my friend. That's what it's called. It's an addiction to growth. One of my affirmations every day is like, I'm a catalyst for growth. And I'm like, because I'm addicted to growth. You know what I mean? And it can become addicting. I totally get it. You get bored, and there's no fun if there's not a higher purpose behind, what you're doing. Absolutely. It totally makes sense. So I'm excited that you are excited about, that bigger and, and better future, and that there are more women out there that are just like you, kind of like waking up to, that next level of growth, of wanting to be of service to others. And I hope that we can convince you to be part of the Land Profit Generator coaching. We're constantly looking out, within our student base and our client base, for amazing women. And I want to see many, many more women. And already, the landscape of the number of students and clients, that are coming in that are women has increased, and I couldn't be more pleased. And now the next thing is, okay, now I need to start elevating into leadership positions, and start, because that's the next level. Because if we all stay at the level of, I'm doing, great work in my land business, but I'm not helping in any way groom that next generation of leaders. That's how I think for us, with Jack, is it's part of our educational business, is part of our legacy play.
Yep.
That's how we continue to affect, many more people and many generations, even once I'm gone. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, and I think it starts from the top down. I have definitely been in scenarios where the top has a lot of dysfunction and problems. So the whole system does, and you guys have created something from the top. You created something that allows people opportunities.
Yeah.
That, and that's why I personally, after I started going, I was like, I'm committed to this. I'm committed to it because it lines up with what I want in life, and that's key. And so once you get people that are committed and they start seeing that they're changing, they're doing deals or whatever, it's not that hard to keep going.
Yes.
Especially with good support.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's for me like my next level of growth. Even it's like that legacy leaders layer, within that we can continue to grow and continue to groom, so that many other women investors that come into our ecosystem, can have really role models. Yeah. Because when we don't have role models and when we don't see, other people that look like us doing what we're doing, it's hard to imagine. So it's part of that imagining and coming to that moment where we say, those are some other person's stories. My story is different, and I can see that my story is different because I see other women whose stories have been like mine, and their story is different now too. You know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely. Christina, thank you so very much. This was one. I feel like we can keep on talking like forever in many episodes.
We might bore people. Doubtful.
Thank you so much. And for you guys listening, I hope that this was a wonderful episode, that even if you're a guy, that if there's an important, a special woman in your life, that you want to pass this conversation or this episode on, that you do so. This is not in us against them. It's really about, all of us stepping into our power and into our sovereignty and really helping each other. We need each other, male, female, we all need each other to be able to, there's a proverb that says, you can get fast with who you have right now, but if you're inclusive and you bring everyone with you, you can get there faster, not just faster, but further. So thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you, Michelle, for having me.
It's always a pleasure. So I will see you hopefully inside of the group. And
you will. Surely.
So,
all right. Thank you.
Any last words or for anyone from you?
I don't think so. I think at this point I've touched on everything on my notes.
And I want to point out to your little thing back there. Go make your money, honey.
Go make your money, honey.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to end this episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope this episode left you feeling inspired and ready to get inflows of cash, inflows of light, and inflows of faith in your life. I welcome your reviews on iTunes. Please leave me a review and help me create an amazing community of women in flow. Thank you, as always, for sharing your voice by going to michellebosch.com and joining the conversation about this show. And while you're there, grab a copy of my 10 Commandments to Living a Life in Flow. You can also follow me on Facebook at Michelle Bosch and on Instagram at Michellebosch Official. Thank you very much, and until the next one.